In the first and second days of training, you learned how to request data from the server to use in your application. In this video, you will learn how to send data to the server using the Flex Web Service component. You will also handle the confirmation message from the server that returns the record ID for the data that was inserted into the database. In this Flex in a Week training, I am assuming that you are watching the videos in order, which means that you have already watched the introduction to the HTTP service component video on this third day of training. If you have not, you might want to consider watching the first 4.5 minutes of that video. In it, I review how data has been retrieved from the server to populate this Employee Portal Vehicle Request form. I also review how the controller is handling the data between the model and the view. Lastly, I discussed packaging the value object, which contains all of this data that the user fills out in this form, in an event object which is now ready for us to pass back to the server. In this video, I will use the web service component to send the form data as a parameter to the server. When I submit this form, the record ID for the record that was inserted into the database is returned, and I handle that in an alert message. This is the starter file for the main application. In the declarations block, I already have one web service component instance. I am typing web and pressing Control Space to show code templates in the Content Assist tool. I'm pressing Enter to insert the web service code template. I will use the second web service instance to send data back to the server. I am modifying the code template so that the web service object is in a single tag syntax and not a block syntax. I'm changing the ID property to vehicle service and changing the WSDL property to this URL. Remember that although we are using a Cold Fusion server to generate this WSDL document, you can use any backend technology like Java, JSP, .NET, or PHP that supports SOAP-based web services. Now I'm removing the value in the result event and using Flash Builder's Code Assist tool to generate the result handler. Lastly, I'm deleting the Use Proxy, Show Busy Cursor, and fault properties from the web service instance. The two ways to pass arguments to the server operations through web services are parameter binding and explicit parameters. Parameter binding allows developers to predefine the source data for argument that will be passed to the server-side operations. This technique is only available if you use the web service MXML tags. You nest a request MXML tag within the operation MXML tags of the web service tag block. To call an operation and pass the defined values, use the web service class's send method. When using explicit parameters, you add the arguments to the operation call in the same order that they are defined in the server operation. This is the way that I will send the data to the server for the company vehicle request form. In the custom event handler for this component, I am placing a breakpoint on the closing curly brace. I'm debugging the application and then filling out the form and submitting it. When I submit the form, Flash Builder opens up the debugging perspective. In the debugging session, you can see that the event object does include the vehicle request data. I'm stopping the debugging session and returning to the Flash perspective. In the event handler, I'm removing the alert message and adding the vehicle service dot add vehicle request operation to send the data to the server. The data object that I'm passing is event dot vehicle request data. I'm saving the file. I am enabling the network monitor, maximizing the view, and then running the application. You can see that the first web service call retrieves the data for display in the drop-down list control. I'm filling out everything in the form except the mobile phone number. When I submit the form, I see a runtime error. Back in Flash Builder, you can see that a second service request is made, but there is an error. I'm switching to raw view, and the first line tells me that I've received a 500 internal server error. As I scroll down, I see a message that says, vehicle request mobile phone cannot be a zero-length string. The mobile phone number is a required field. I'm minimizing the network monitor view and returning to my code. Now I'm going to add a fault handler to show an alert message when the mobile phone field is left blank. To the vehicle service web service object, I am adding a fault event and using the Content Assist tool to generate the fault handler. I'm locating the generated fault handler in the script block and removing the generated code stub. Within the function, I'm adding the alert.show method to display the event.fault.fault string as the text in the alert pop-up. I'm also giving the alert message a title of fault information. I'm saving the file and running the application. Now when I fill out everything, except for the mobile phone field, and then submit the form, I see an alert message with the fault string. Of course, in the real world, you likely would not have printed the fault string in the alert message. You can place any message that you want to in the alert box. Lastly, I want to display an alert message with the record ID when the data is returned from the server. So in the result handler, I am typing if and pressing Control space twice to show code templates in the Content Assist tool. I'm selecting the template for the if statement. I'm setting the conditional statement to evaluate the event.result.id value. Within the if statement, I'm adding another alert.show method. The request was submitted. The record ID is, and then concatenating the event.result.id value. I'm saving the file and running the application, and then filling out the form. When I submit the form, the server sends back the record ID for the record that was submitted to the database. For your next step, work through the exercise titled Passing Data to the Server with the Web Service class.